I love this industry so much. It's given me everything. It's allowed me to see the world and to try some of the best food in the world, drink some of the best wine in the world, and meet incredible people. And so I feel really sad that a lot of people haven't had that same experience and have felt like this industry burned them or they were treated badly.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are heading to Sydney to chat to Danielle Alvarez from Fred's in Paddington. Danielle also appears on Good Food Kitchen, a new show that's coming up on 9 and ties in with Good Food that I write for and that Danielle writes for. Danielle, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks, Dani. I'm so happy to be on.
I'm really thrilled to talk to you and, love traveling to Sydney, if only in audio fashion at the moment. But hopefully by summer, I'll be able to get back to your town. How are things feeling there at the moment as the city is preparing to reopen?
Well, it feels like there's an excitement in the air. I was in the park yesterday for a picnic and people are just out, and I think everyone's really ready to get back to restaurants, get back to more normalcy in terms of going out in daily life. Who knows what that's really going to look like once we actually do it. But I think people are excited and feeling really ready. And we're certainly thinking about our friends in Melbourne and Victoria and hoping that they get to that place very soon.
Thank you. We will. We're on a track.
As well.
Yeah.
Some track.
We're definitely going to get there. That is 100% sure. So tell me what you do to prepare for reopening. I mean, you've sort of skipped over some seasons while you've been in lockdown. Fred's is so produce focused. What do you actually, what do you do to get that machine cranking again?
Well, I guess there's a few lots of steps that need to be taken. I think first and foremost is reconnecting with the staff and making sure that you have enough people and the same people that we closed with that are going to be coming back to join us. So I think we did a lot of work in the past few months just to keep in touch and to make sure that those people still felt engaged, which was really crucial to ensuring that when we reopen, we still have a full team. And thankfully we do. And we've hired some new chefs to join us. So that was probably step one, something that we started really focusing on a few weeks ago when we knew this date would be rapidly approaching. And then from then it's talking to the farms and finding out what we can expect for an estimated date or kind of a general idea of what we can expect to be able to put on our menu. And then once we know that, we can actually start writing the menu and tweaking things, making little plans, testing recipes, that kind of stuff. That's sort of what we've been doing the past few weeks. And I think we're about ready. We're going to be doing heaps of training this week, which is the week before opening, and then prep and then get into opening on Monday, the 11th.
I mean, it just sounds so exciting, but I'm sure there's a bit of trepidation as well among the staff. And I think also from diners, as much as everybody's excited to get back out there, I think there'll be nervousness as well.
Sure. I totally expect that as well. I mean, I think there are lots of people that are like, I'm getting a lot of messages like, I've booked for your opening night. I've booked for, your opening week and all that. So there are people that are really dying to get out. But I know there's so many people that are hesitant, that don't really feel like it's quite right yet, or they're probably going to wait and see how things go before they decide to go out to restaurants. And that's fair. I think it's a really unsure time. I think the staff have been feeling pretty good and they're generally really excited to come back. But there's going to be a bit of apprehension around how are the guests going to be? What are they going to feel like? There's so many things we have to deal with at this time that we weren't dealing with several months ago. And so it's all new things. It's all things that everyone's a bit nervous about, but I'm sure we'll get there, to a point where it starts to feel really good again. It's just that beginning, that pre-opening jitters that gets everyone freaked out, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that from our big reopening last spring, that, you know, I mean, what you hope is, I guess, that the people that aren't quite ready to come back out, that sort of maps onto the restricted capacity anyway, and that it all sort of gears up in sync. I think it's such a big ask for, you know, hospitality professionals to hold that energy and create that safe space, you know, that buoyant feeling, you know, while the staff are sort of gearing up themselves, that there's also this expectation, and I'm sure, you know, like it is a desire to create an incredible experience for guests. I just think it's I respect it so much, and I'm so grateful for all the people that are going to be finding that energy to share, you know, to create those beautiful hospitality experiences that we're all missing.
Yeah, well, you get it, Dani. I mean, that is, like, at the end of the day, we're all humans like everyone else, whether we're in hospitality and putting on a brave face or not. I think when you understand that really it's not magic what happens behind the scenes, although hopefully that is what we deliver. It is just people trying to do their best, you know, trying to be creative. And we do it because we want to make people happy. I mean, I think ultimately that is what hospitality is about. So hopefully we're making ourselves and each other happy in the same step, because if we're not doing that, then we can't deliver that to the guests. So I think it's going to be an interesting few weeks, but generally I would say, at least for us and for my team, we're feeling excited and like we can't wait to get back there.
And I mean, the way that Fred's is set up, it is such an open kitchen. I guess there's no hiding from anyone.
There never has been, which, you know, I joke about, like, God, if I ever opened another restaurant, I'm never doing that again, because it can be so draining. At the same time, it's also extremely rewarding because we get to see people enjoying things right in front of us, and they're talking to us all the time, like telling us how much they loved everything. And when I get to see a guest tell a chef in a particular section that they loved the thing that they made, without even telling me, like completely bypassing me, that brings me so much joy. Because if you're in a house kitchen, you're never going to get that. And I think for a chef, that's like the greatest feeling in the world.
I mean, and it really speaks to this whole sort of energy exchange that has to happen, you know, where you really do hope that guests are coming with kind hearts and, you know, ready to shower praise where they
and
feel
support.
It's,
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, I have to say, like, you might think this is a bit of a weird thing for me to say, but I've never actually eaten at Fred's, because I've tried, but I've never been able to get a reservation on my brief trips to Sydney.
Come on.
But I know, but what I wanted to say is that I have, this is where it gets weird. I have stood outside the restaurant and just kind of peered in, and just honestly, I could feel what it felt like to be in there, just the golden glow, and that I really could sense that the exchange, that it is such an exchange, that, you know, this exchange of energy, this exchange of plates and food and feeling. And so I don't know. I feel like, as much as there are the challenges with the open kitchens, that maybe it's a little bit what we need at the moment to create, you know, to really boost that sense of empathy and the sense of, you know, common humanity, that the hospitality experience, you know, both sides have got to come to the party.
No, that's totally right. I mean, I think the fact that it is so open, it's not just so open for us, it's also really open for the guests. So I think, you know, I do, like 99% of the time, feel a genuine, like, excitement from people coming into that space. They want to see what we're doing. They can't believe that it's all happening right there in front of their eyes, and there's a big fire and all of that. And at the same time, it's a really beautiful dining room with soft lighting and, you know, comfy chairs and all that. So it's a really, like, warm, welcoming place. And even if you come in with a bit of apprehension, or, you know, you think you're not going to like it, or you think, you know, you have your preconceived ideas about what we do, I generally think that by the end of it, people have let their guards down a little bit. They get it a little bit more, and they're a little bit more understanding of the challenge of what we do. Because the chefs in my kitchen really, they work tremendously hard. And I think when the lights turn on and everyone comes in the dining room, it is a bit like that curtain coming up on a stage, and they have to perform. And they do it really in a way that makes it look effortless, but I mean, not all the time, but most of the time. And I think people that get is the chance to see that firsthand can start to appreciate a bit more. A lot of people will even just say, my God, it must be so hot in front of the fireplace. And I think, well, that's how most kitchens are around the world. And that's one small thing that makes it challenging. You know, there's so many other facets to it, but anything we can do to bring down while also bringing up that curtain and showing people the reality of cooking for people in a restaurant, I think is good. I really do think it's good.
Yeah, it's sort of like, opening people up to the magic, but also demystifying at the same time. It's a really interesting balance. Yeah. So what about the practicalities? I mean, the big topic that a lot of people are talking about is vaccination and, the fact that only vaccinated diners will be allowed to come in. But as I understand it, New South Wales restaurants haven't really had a clear direction in how that's going to work, what the mechanism is. Tell me how that's all shaping up.
Well, I think I guess I'm not the expert, but I do know that the vaccine passport is something that is gonna come. I know that for the 11th, it won't be ready. So we've sort of been advised to be checking like vaccination certificates, which at the time of booking, people are told that will be checked when they come into the restaurant. And we're just going to have an extra person on checking that as people come into the venue. And that's how it's going to work.
It'll be interesting to see how amenable people are to showing it.
It will.
Yeah.
I mean, I really hope people don't take out their frustrations on the lovely people in the restaurant. That's probably my biggest fear, but I have faith and I have real hope that the people that come into Fred's will come with kindness and respect and understanding of the rules.
And what about among staff? I mean, Maryvale, owns the restaurant. Have they been very proactive in talking about staff vaccinations?
Yes. I think it's they've had great communication, I think, over the past several months, and a lot of opportunity to hear people out, hear people's apprehensions out. I think most staff, and I don't have any figures or anything, but I think most staff are on board and having their vaccinations. And I think anyone that isn't or can't due to health reasons, there's conversations that have been had with those people and I assume a plan, but they won't be working when we reopen.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Because, I mean, in Victoria, we've just had the announcement that if you work in hospitality, you will need to at least have one shot by the time restaurants are open and then follow up with the second. So it's, I mean, I guess it's a really interesting landscape. I don't know if interesting is the right word. It's a bit fraught. I guess most people...
it's totally just, fraught. Yeah, and I don't think we've ever, as humanity, I can't think of any time where we've been in this kind of scenario before. I mean, I don't want to get into the vaccine debate, but there's a lot of things that you are required to have vaccines for anyway. And it just feels like this is one of those things where, people are not on board for whatever reason. And I think there's going to be challenged with that for sure.
Well, I really, as you say, I really hope that your frontline workers there are not, that it's not too draining or that there's not too much conflict. I imagine at a restaurant like Fred's where people need to book in and they are aware of it and, they're probably people that go out quite a bit. So hopefully it's just another restaurant where they have to show their status.
Yeah. I mean, we have great customers, like honestly, some of the nicest people I've met in Sydney that come to us time and time again. And I really hope that, that continues.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much you stay in touch with your alma mater, Chez Panisse, but I noticed that they've decided not to reopen, even though they can, but they just find that in the environment of Delta and with, I guess, even a much more fraught vaccine environment in the US and, you know, an enormous case load, that they've decided to stick to takeaway and markets.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're obviously aware of that.
Yeah, I did see that they made that decision, and they're sort of looking towards like a 2022 reopening, which would be great. I know so many people are missing going into that restaurant. I think it just talks a lot to what Chez Panisse is about. Like, it's such a, I don't know what the right word is, but like, it's such a caring place that I sort of think the total abundance of caution at every turn and just not wanting to put anything at risk, is probably why they've made that decision. And that, you know, they've behaved that way for the past 50 years. So I don't see why that would change now. So if they're able to keep that going and keep that happening, and I'm sure, you know, they have a lot of great support in their community, so I'm sure they do, then, you know, good on them. I wish them all the best when they do reopen. I'd love to see it.
That's so interesting because, yeah, as you talk about that care and, you know, being careful, it just, I don't know, for some reason what came into my mind was someone picking herbs and just this really delicate, like, you know, frond by frond. I've seen a bowl of dill actually, or maybe some chervil, and it's just like, you know, each tiny little piece of green is looked after like a baby.
It's true. I mean, it's total integrity, I think, like, beginning to end. I guess it might feel wrong for them to push through an opening if they didn't feel like it was the safest thing for their community, because that's what they've been advocating for 50 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think it's also, you know, the uncertainty of opening and closing. And I guess with some businesses, it's hard for any business to, you know, suddenly close and then gear up again. But perhaps for some businesses, it's harder than others.
Yeah. And I think focusing a lot on the staff as well. Like there's a lot of staff that worked at Chez Panisse for many, many years when I was there, and I know we're still working there at the time. And a lot of them are quite a bit older, which is great to see, but I'm sure a lot of that staff are more apprehensive about coming back as well. So they've probably had to consider that too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Now we were chatting earlier for a story I'm writing about the new TV show, and I want to stay in California and get you to reprise a story that totally charmed me about some scrambled eggs. And I'll just set it up by saying that in the first episode of the show, which I think it's a really nice show, you make scrambled eggs. And I mean, like, I watch food shows, you know, I love watching them, and I feel like you always pick something up no matter how much you might think you know about a dish. But I have to say, I was not expecting to be completely floored by the way that you scrambled eggs, Danielle. So talk me through it and then tell me the story behind it.
So the process of the scrambled eggs, and I guess maybe I'm going to start with the history, because I can't really talk about the eggs too much without saying really where this like technique came from. But when I was a young cook in San Francisco, I was fortunate to work at a restaurant called Boulette's Larder, which is in the very iconic ferry building of San Francisco, which is where one of the greatest farmers markets in the world was right outside our back door, actually. So that was really wonderful. But the leader of the kitchen and owner of the restaurant, a woman named Amaryl Schwartner, and she had this way of cooking her scrambled eggs that was pretty well known and famous throughout the city. We did breakfast Monday to Friday, and I didn't really understand it when I first got there, but I do remember, like, before working there, people saying, "Oh my God, she makes the best eggs." I don't know how she does it, but they're incredible. And I got a job there, and no one was allowed to touch the eggs or to make the breakfast for months and months and months. I think it was only the fact that I think she got sick or something and had to be out for a few weeks, that they asked me if I would do it. And it was like the most nerve-wracking thing. I mean, like being handed the spatula and the nonstick pan was like, I'm not ready to scramble the eggs. Yeah, I guess a bit like what you hear about like Japanese sushi masters, like you just make the rice for years before you're able to make anything else. So I was kind of, thrown into the fire. And I remember watching her a lot, like before this happened. It was kind of sudden when I was on the breakfast. But she has this way of cooking the eggs. She'd take 3 eggs in the bowl, scramble them up really, really well. But then she'd take a big knob of butter and sort of over like a soft medium heat, she'd put the butter in cold, swirl it around the pan, and then immediately tip in the eggs. So you'd have this kind of pool of the scrambled eggs, but this knob of butter right still in the middle. And she would say, you put that in and then you wait like 10, 15 seconds, something like that. And then just with a spatula, you start like pulling from around the outside. You create a bit of these like folds, like you almost treat the eggs as if it's a little bit of like fabric or something like that. And you keep the butter solid and cold the entire time. So if you've made it perfectly, your egg should be finished and the butter should be just melting at the very last second. And that whole process, probably takes about 2 minutes or something like that. But it was just this like beautiful choreography and dance. And it was hard to get right, especially in the heat of service when you have 20 orders for eggs on the line. But it's something that always stuck with me. I always felt a huge sense of responsibility around, producing the perfect scrambled eggs in her absence. And it's how I do eggs ever since. I mean, I don't know how to do scrambled eggs another way now. So they're luxurious, they're velvety, they're silky, and I made them on the show, and I didn't have time to go into this whole story. So I'm happy that your listeners can hear a bit of that now, and I hope they can watch and see how it's done.
Definitely. I mean, to me, it says something about the zen of cooking, where I can just imagine that, really bustling short order kitchen with, 20 things on the go. But then, you really have to attend to this pan, right? It's like, everything has to drop a little bit silent, and, you just have to really be there.
And so that was a wildly open kitchen as well. Like, I mean, I think I turned around and there was probably like a couple of feet between me and someone sitting at a table right there. So I feel like that's probably where I started to like embrace this feeling of like, it's one thing to, I guess, do it for yourself in your home kitchen, but to be able to silence the noise around you and focus on what your hands are doing. You're attentive, you're listening to what the pan is doing, you're smelling what's coming out of there. And all of those cues are telling you what to do next and when to do it. So it's really like intuitive cooking at its best.
How much of that feeling or that attention is still possible, for you when you're running a restaurant and it's so busy, there's so many different dishes?
I think it's just become how I cook, like quite nicely. Like I think when you're a young cook and you really have to like think about everything you're doing, things just take longer because it's not like muscle memory. It's like, okay, this is happening, so now I need to do this. Okay, that's happening. Now that's my cue for this to happen. I think that when you've been cooking a long time and you are pretty in tune with your abilities and the thing that you're cooking, you don't even need to have that internal dialogue anymore. It just happens. Like you find yourself just reaching for the plate at the right moment. You find yourself reaching for the salt at that time. And it kind of just happens in a really weird way.
That just sounds like a really nice zone to be in.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess that's the difference between being like a professional chef and, someone who cooks as a hobby or whatever. I've done it for so many hours that I guess that's how long it takes to get to that place. But I imagine that's how, a professional athlete feels, or like an incredible artist, like whenever they can just get into that headspace where they create or do that thing that they have been practicing and doing over and over and over for so long, it really just becomes like it takes on a life of its own.
Tell me about, let's talk a bit about spring. Like, what are you hearing from your producers? Like, what's coming through? What are you looking forward to cooking?
Well, we've got incredible, beautiful snow peas and sweet English peas coming via a friend of mine who buys from some small local farms. And I tried them just last week and they were unbelievably sweet, just like raw, straight out of the pod. So I'm really excited for things like that. I think it's also the time of year where all the brassicas are blossoming, where a lot of the herbs are flowering. So it's the time of year that I actually do put quite a lot of flowers and pretty things on the plate, where mostly I'm just about, give me the things that make it delicious. But this time of year, you really need to embrace everything from root to flower. And it changes really quick in Australia, especially in Sydney, I think, because it gets really hot really fast. So the spring season is incredibly short-lived. So we probably will only have those things around for a couple more weeks. And then we're looking right into tomatoes, stone fruit, eggplants, capsicums, that kind of stuff, which probably will be hitting its peak, around that like December, January time.
Wow, I've just got such an opening night feeling in my belly, like that there's just flowers are blooming.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, it's kind of incredible that this like rebirth of the city is coinciding with the total rebirth of, nature. Not that we have a particularly terrible winter here. It's super mild, but it is kind of poetic. I think the sun is shining, things are warming up, and people are ready to also be going outside too.
Absolutely. I think, it's I feel like it's probably too soon to say how can we look back on this period, but let's try to do it anyway. I mean, we've been in this pandemic, in various ups and downs for 18 months. Do you have a sense, whether you've come out of it or you're coming out of it, changed or with a different perspective? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if I look at it a little bit more like globally, I feel, and I don't mean to put a downer at the end, but I feel a little bit sad for what's happened to our industry over the past 2 years. And I really wonder what it's going to take to have a better recovery and a better future. I think the amount of staff that we have lost has been, we were already struggling to find people that were passionate about this industry. And now it's so much worse. And I really think it's become the limiting factor. Like, I can't understand. I mean, I do understand and I don't, because I love this industry so much. It's given me everything. It's allowed me to see the world and to try some of the best food in the world, drink some of the best wine in the world, and meet incredible people. And so I feel really sad that a lot of people haven't had that same experience and have felt like this industry burns them, or they were treated badly, or, just the joy and the excitement around this industry, I think, has been lost a little bit. And I really think, the people, those of us that still love it and are passionate about it, really need to keep that going and be the best leaders possible that we can be. And that's not just about cooking and food.
Yeah. Well, I think once again, this is where it's a partnership between the customers and the people working in the industry. And I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. There's so many people that have left, and Australia and, lots of other countries have had many of their internationals leave, which has been devastating. But I just think there's an onus on customers to be willing to pay the true cost of of dining out, and also to bring their very kind hearts to the experience. And, and of course, their understanding. It's a really tricky one. I remember this when Melbourne reopened last year. when we reopened the first time, for the most part, everyone was just like super excited and grateful. And then after we'd been through the grind of our long lockdown, there was definitely that feeling still as well. And that was probably most people, but there was also a bit of a bit more entitlement creeping in, and a bit more anger, and a bit more dissatisfaction, and a bit of a, well, I've waited so long for this, it has to be exactly what I expect it to be. And I just really hope that, you know, people come with a greater sense of understanding, with a willingness to spend, and with, just kindness.
Yeah, I mean, I think if people really understood or saw the bottom line on a lot of small business restaurants, P&Ls, they might really stop questioning so much why things cost what they do. Like, there's nothing that upsets me more than when I hear people complaining about things like that, because, and yeah, it's going to be a shock, because actually it should be more than what we've been paying. But if you only knew the real cost of operating in the way that we do, I think people wouldn't say it quite so loudly a lot of the time. But you're right. I mean, the financial side of it is one thing. I also think it's been great to see a lot of leaders in the industry sort of mature and grow and change their models to be more sustainable for their teams, and involve more inspiring training aspects of their businesses. I think that's so great. And I think that's that's the second half of how we're going to get people to join this industry, to help us make it super exciting again, to bring Australia, more to the forefront of the culinary landscape. Is we need to get young chefs and young floor staff and young sommeliers and bartenders to see the real value of what we do. And if the customer can come to the table with that excitement and, appreciation for what we do, then I think it'll just happen that much quicker.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess from an employer's point of view, staff have never been so valuable, like so valued. And hopefully that means that they're valued. So,
yes. Yeah. Well, you have to right now. Like, honestly, if you're not treating your staff like they are the number one most important thing, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where you don't have them. So,
yeah, there's so much to watch and wait for and work towards. Danielle, it's just such an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Oh, goodness me, I'm so excited for you to reopen. I'm excited for everyone who gets to experience it, and for your staff who get to create that experience with you.
Thank you so much, Dani. It's been a pleasure talking about all of these very important topics. And like you said, we will see what happens next.
Yeah, and hopefully next time I come to Fred, it won't just be to peer through the window.
Yes. Stop being creepy, Dani. We need to get you in the doors.
Yeah, no more lurking. All right. You take care.
Thanks, Dani. Bye.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This